Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Statistics show that 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. According to a 2018 Gallup study featured in Forbes magazine, more than one-third, 36% of U.S. workers are in the gig economy, which works out to approximately 57 million people. A survey conducted by Sun Trust found over half of millennials have a side hustle, and they said they made an average of $10,972 from these side gigs. 19% said that they had more than one side gig. From pastors in the pulpit to people in the pews, many people have cut and cut, but still find themselves struggling to pay the bills. Their full-time job is giving them barely enough to get by. How could they even begin to think about eliminating debt, saving, and living generously? Financial expert and author Art Rainer helps answer these questions in his new book, Find More Money, by pointing readers to the reality of the gig economy. When a full-time job doesn't provide what you need, finding a gig may be the answer to your problem. Find More Money is not just about financial stewardship, but about stewarding your talents, time, and abilities, not so you can get rich, but so you can live generously on mission for the kingdom. Art Rainer is the Vice President of Institutional Advancement at Southeastern Bible Theological Seminary. Here he holds a Doctor of Business Administration from Nova Southeastern University and an MBA from the University of Kentucky. He writes widely about issues related to finance, wealth, and generosity, and is the author of The Money Challenge, 30 Days of Discovering God's Design for You and Your Money, The Marriage Challenge, a finance guide for married couples, and here to talk about his latest book, Find More Money, Increase Your Income to Tackle Debt, Save Wisely, and Live Generously. Art Rainer, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Art, before we delve into the book, let's take a little journey back with you, back to your journey to faith, the influence in your life, faith and finances, because they both played an important role in shaping who you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were both believers. My dad was a pastor for a long period of my childhood, and came to faith at the age of 7, and just grew up learning to walk closer and closer to Christ. At the age of around 15 and 16, my dad introduced me to the power of compounding. And he demonstrated how you can make money off of your money. So I was one of those weird ones that actually opened up a retirement account at age 16 or 17. I can't remember the exact age, but I was a teenager and had started earning income with my part-time job. And so I would take a portion of it and actually set aside a little bit into a retirement account. And I guess you could say that the rest is history there. I actually graduated, as you mentioned, at the University of Kentucky with a degree in finance. And my goal was to be a CFP, Certified Financial Planner. So I went into the banking industry, set on that particular career path, but God had other plans for me. And after a few years of being in the banking industry, I just grew unsettled and eventually went into full-time ministry, starting with being an administrative pastor at a church, where I continued to not only help the church in their finances, but also help individuals with their individual personal finances. As you know, those in the church are not immune to these statistics that we read. What we see in the church is very representative of what we see outside of the church, unfortunately. And so I was able to work with people in their finances, help them to become more generous by freeing up debt, helping them save for retirement, helping them to plan for college. And now I'm clearly writing quite a bit about this very particular topic, just simply trying to help people. As Americans, we're struggling in this area. You pointed out that 4 out of every 5 of us are living paycheck to paycheck. 40% of Americans right now do not have $400 or more in their bank account. So if an emergency hits, if the washing machine goes out, if a tire goes flat, they're borrowing money via credit card or maybe from family and friends. And in general, I'd say that we're pretty dissatisfied as Americans with our finances, in part because we've made it an end in and of itself. And that's not how God intended money to work. It's a means to a much more significant, more satisfying, contentment-filled end. And so that's my motivation. I want to help people get out of debt. I want to help people save for retirement. I want to help people find more money so that then they can live and give generously as God has designed them to do.
I remember counseling a couple, and they were having some problems, so I kind of went down a list of things, and we talked about their home life. We talked about and they were very transparent, and who does what and all those kind of things. And then we went through their sex life. We talked about that, and finally I asked them about finances, and they said that was now much too personal to discuss. So they would talk freely about their sex life, freely about their home life, but when it came to money, that was something that they weren't willing to talk about. It's almost like your soul gets saved, your heart gets saved, your mouth may get saved, your brain may get saved, but in many cases your wallet does not get saved. And basic principles in God's economy of sowing and reaping, of binding and loosing, of being good stewards turns out to be a struggle because of so many counterfeit messages that are out there that have nothing to do with God. So wherever there's an original, there's going to be a counterfeiter. If you know that 18% interest on a credit card is exorbitant, that $18 a year of every $100 you owe, for $100 you owe 118. I don't understand the concept. I haven't lived that concept. My home was run. If you didn't have the money to pay for it, you didn't buy it. Congregation-wise, if we didn't have 50% cash to buy a building, and then have a 5-year plan to pay it off, we didn't buy it.
You've hit on a lot of really important topics there. Wallet management, money management reflects heart management. And you hit on that topic of money being taboo. Unfortunately, that is the case. You're exactly right. For whatever reason, and this includes in the church, we're able to talk about every other part of an individual's life. But when it comes to the wallet, when it comes to the bank account, that's where it stops, right? That becomes taboo. And it's sad and unfortunate. And I think that we've bought into this lie that it is taboo. And I'm convinced that it's not of God. Why am I convinced that it's not of God? Well, because Jesus spoke on money more than any other topic while he was here on earth. There's over 2,000 verses about money, possessions, stewardship, woven all throughout Scripture. So clearly, God cares about how we manage our resources, the resources that He's given us. And so we should care as well. He cares because we know it's a reflection of our heart. As you had already mentioned, there's many idols that can get in the way. And money, the accumulation of money, can be one of those idols, or what money provides us, whether it's security, which in and of itself isn't a bad thing, but can become an idol, material possessions. So money can become a means to an idol as well, not just an idol in and of itself. And I'm convinced that one of the reasons why Satan has duped us to believing that money is a taboo topic is because of the great opportunity that God has given us here in the United States. Did you know that over the next 20 years or so, they estimate that around $30 trillion will be transferred from one generation to the next? Now, let's just assume for a second that 25% of Americans are evangelicals. They're Christians. Let's just assume that, just for a second. You can argue those numbers. Ultimately, you're going to see that it doesn't matter. If you assume that, that means that about $7.5 trillion will be in the hands of Christians. Now, right now, they estimate that there's around 3,200 unreached people groups around the world, people that have yet to hear the name of Jesus. If we assume, and I know the viewers and listeners out there aren't probably doing some mental math here, but I've already done it, so you don't have to worry about it. But let's assume that it takes $75,000 per year to reach one of those 3,200 unreached people groups, and then let's also assume that it takes really 20 years to engage that group. Well, 3,200 times 75,000 times 20 years is about $4.8 billion with a B. Now remember, we have 7.5 trillion with a T. For those of you who aren't familiar with the difference between a billion and a trillion, there's 1,000 billion in 1 trillion. So we're talking about a drop in the bucket. We literally have the resources right now to reach every tongue, tribe, and nation. Now, what bothers me, what haunts me, what motivates me is this question: what if we don't? What if we don't do something about it? What if we don't even give it a go, give it a try? Are we going to be the generation of Christians that future generations will look back on and say, well, what were they thinking? What were they doing? They had it, but they decided to do something else with it. Now, for many Americans, they're hearing these numbers and like, yes, I want to do that. I want to be more generous. I want to live more generously. I want to live according to how God has designed me to be and work with my money the way that God has designed me to be. But my problem is that I just don't have any money at the end of the month. There's no margin in my budget. And that's why I wrote Find More Money. I started having these conversations over and over and over again, where it really wasn't an expense issue. Now, for some, it is. And there needs to be attention brought to that expense side of the financial equation. That's why I wrote the Money Challenge and the Marriage Challenge. And those books hit on that very topic. But people kept on coming up to me and they would say, Art, I love what you're writing. I love the lens through which you write, through which you talk about personal finances. But here's my problem. It's not that I have a ton of debt. It's not that I have a bunch of subscriptions like Netflix and Disney Plus. I've cut all of those things out. I just don't have enough money. So what do? I had a gentleman that I was meeting with, and he had me look at his budget. And he said, all right, I don't know what I need to do, but it's just not working. And I looked at his budget, and now granted, he was single. And I said, so based on this line item, you're spending about $50 per week on food. And he said, oh, no. That's every other week. Now I did some quick math, and that amounts to $1.19 per meal. So my conversation with him was not, hey, you need to go down from $1.19 to 75 cents per meal. It was, we need to actually start focusing on the income side of the equation. And the good news is that there has never been a greater opportunity to increase your income through side gigs. And that's what Find More Money does. It helps you, it walks you through, first of all, understanding what God's design for money is, what God's design for work is, but then also what a side gig is, how to figure out which side gig is right for you, and then how to start generating revenue, increasing your income so that you can pay down debt, so that you can save for retirement, and so that you can live more generously.
I look at opportunities like Lyft and Airbnb, all these other ways to take either time or assets and redeploy them in different ways. You have a 3-bedroom home, you live in 1 bedroom, you have 2 empty bedrooms. Okay, are you willing to let a stranger come into your home, and can you charge an amount and get a return for that empty space? And the answer is you can. But the motivation, the heart of why people do what they do, we're in an economy where rent is high, home ownership is low by comparison to rent. There's no return on paying rent, but there's so many programs to qualify for home purchase. Is home purchase still the best first asset that, aside from a emergency savings account?
Yeah, so home ownership is a question that many are asking, that many ask me about. And here's the guidelines that I provide those who are considering home ownership versus renting. First of all, you want to make sure that you're going to be in there for at least 5 years. So you want to be able to own that home for 5 years. If you're not, then the upfront cost that you incur and some of the fixes that you'll probably need to do with that home, you're just not going to recoup those costs. And so you're actually going to end up losing money on the home, and you probably would have been better off just renting. The second guideline is that you, of course, are able to put down a 20% down payment to avoid PMI or private mortgage insurance. And this is the fee that's on top of your mortgage payment.
Right.
Now, it's important to note that the banks put this fee on there because you're viewed, if you can't put down 20% of your home loan, you're viewed as a higher risk individual for default. So they're looking at all their statistics and they're saying, based on what I'm seeing, if you can't put 20% down, then you're more likely to default than this other group. And that should cause you to pause and wonder, okay, now obviously nobody goes into a home thinking that they're going to default on the mortgage, but there's something to be said for this 20%. There's something to be said for their ability to manage finances already. If you can save up that amount of money, that means something to you, about you, and to the bank. So that's why I recommend getting to that 20% mark. And then finally, I would not recommend going above 30% of your gross income for your mortgage payment. That would be the max that I would recommend. So those are the guidelines that I would provide. For some, it makes sense to purchase a home. It's a good thing. It's a good thing for, believe it or not, for your retirement, because you don't want to enter retirement still having to make a housing payment. And so if you can own a home debt-free going into retirement, you've wiped out what is typically, it takes about a third of your income in retirement, which is a payment. So you've wiped out that payment. Home ownership is a long-term strategy to free up future cash flow. And so you should go into home ownership thinking, okay, I'm getting this home so that then I won't have a mortgage payment, so that then I won't have a house payment in the future. So you should absolutely pursue home ownership as long as it fits within that criteria that I just provided. Because if not, if you're not going to leave earlier, if your payment's high, then you could either lose money or put yourself in a very bad financial position.
As we look at what's motivating people, people in my position live in large homes. I live in a very modest garden home. When I was senior executive in corporate America, I lived in a very large home. Tax-wise, it was more beneficial to live in a larger home with a bigger mortgage than it was to live in a smaller home with a smaller mortgage. It was just, there were more benefits that I could derive from it that kind of paid for itself. So you did that. Plus, I expected somebody at that level, when they entertained, that they weren't entertaining in a bungalow, that you were holding corporate dinners and events in a home that was reflective of the position. When you take the God factor and you put it in, this was before I was a believer, and you see the humility, you see the desire to share with others, to break bread with others, to provide for others, then the modest view of money becomes kingdom-centric as opposed to self-centric. What can I do more? What can I do more with less so that I can do more for the kingdom? So if I have X amount of dollars in disposable income, just because my friends live in this neighborhood, and my kids' friends live in this neighborhood, all the homes are 5 bedrooms, and we have 2 kids, so We really need 3 bedrooms and a spare. We need 4, but we're going to have to move into this higher price neighborhood because that's where all their friends live. Is that pressure enough, or do I bite the bullet and save myself $150,000 and buy a house a mile or 2 down the road and pay it off faster, do biweekly, do extra principal payments? I still have the same personal rule that if I buy a home, if I can't pay for it in 5 years, I'm not going to buy it. So I'm going to allocate a certain percent to biweekly and full mortgage payments, so that the second payment is all principal, and can pay a 30-year mortgage, get a 30-year rate, and pay it off in 5 years. There's a way to do that. Now, that gives up going out to eat. That gives up, vacations. But I have a financial plan, a financial goal, and I'm old. So I'm past the standard retirement age, or right at the standard retirement age, and need to have things put in place to make sure that I'm financially secure, that should something happen tomorrow, that I don't have this huge scrambling. So I don't carry debt. I don't carry anything that is going to be long-term. I'm not long-term. Therefore, my debt should not be long-term. My 94-year-old mother signed a 5-year car lease 3 weeks ago. I thought to myself, that's very interesting that they would give a 94-year-old a car lease for that long a time, but they do it all the time. Will she be physically able? I pray so, but that gets on the top of the scale of risk, or feeling like the estate would be able to pay for it. How much are we still motivated by keeping up with the social media Joneses, and motivated by the social media Instagrammers and the social media pictures that our kids' friends are posting all the time of the events at their home, which are much nicer than our home? How do we encourage people to walk by faith and not by sight, and to spend wisely on the things that are important? Financial planners don't tend to, they tend to take a look at the spreadsheet and then enter into the dialogue if they get really right down to it. How important is this to you? Why are you doing this versus that? Do you have to have a vacation, which is 5 of you fly to Australia? What if you put that money towards something else? Are we in a society which is not taking a fiduciary responsibility for our own money, and continue to acquire because of pressures?
Yeah, you've hit on a significant issue there. So, relating to keeping up with the Joneses, or as some now say, keeping up with the Gateses, because we're no longer comparing ourselves to people of a little bit greater means than us. We're comparing ourselves, because of social media, to people of significantly greater means than ourselves, because we have access to their lives in ways that we didn't have in the past. And so the idea that keeping up with your Joneses is where you're looking to your neighbors on the left and the right, seeing what car that they drive, and then maybe going and taking a look at what your coworkers are driving, is just no longer the case anymore. The population that you're comparing yourselves to has expanded dramatically. Now, here's the problem. What you're comparing yourself to is often a facade. When you look at the statistics on national debt, which we're at an all-time high with consumer loan debt, when you look at the statistics on car loans, when you look at the statistics on student loans. When you see somebody that's living in a very nice house, driving a very nice car, and you find yourself envious of what they're doing, what they're experiencing, you're not seeing the whole picture. You're seeing the filtered picture that they want you to see. They're showing you the smiling faces. They're showing you the experiences, but what they're not showing is the bank account. They're not showing you the credit card. They're not showing that they are house poor, and which is more likely than not when you look at statistics. I was meeting with a couple regarding their budget, and the wife said, I just don't see how everybody drives all of these really nice cars. How can they afford all of these really nice cars? And I looked at her and said, they can't. They're a lot like you, but they've made a different decision. They've decided to spend beyond their means. In fact, they might not even be able to actually own that car. They're leasing it, right? Which just means that you're renting the car for a few years, and you're going to turn it in. And then in order to drive another car, you're either going to have to get a loan or start another lease. It's not even their car. And so what you're seeing is a facade, but it is impacting us because we often compare ourselves to those who have much as opposed to those who have little. And that's what I also encourage individuals to do, is to consider those who have less than. The reality is that in America, if you make $33,000 per year, you're in the top 95% of the world's income earners. You are rich according to the world's standards. You are very rich, and you get to experience things that most do not get to experience around the world. And so, but because we are comparing ourselves to those who have more and not less, which is more often not the case, we start to develop discontent in our lives, dissatisfaction in our lives. Now, let's go back to what the scripture says about how God has wired us for generosity, how we are to reflect the generosity of our God, how we're to make giving a priority. So it's to be the first thing that we do. We're to give proportionately, meaning that those who have more give more. So you give according to what God has given you. We're to give sacrificially. I think of 2 Samuel 24:24, when David was offered everything that he needed to do a sacrifice, land, animal, everything. And what did he say? No, I will not offer to my God that which costs me nothing. We're to be sacrificial. And then finally, we're to give cheerfully, because God doesn't want a bunch of grumpy givers. And that's where the scripture leads us. Now, what happens when we do that? Well, according to even secular research out there, when you are more generous, you're actually more content, more satisfied with your resources that you have. When you live with open hands, you find yourself content. And it goes, I think of 1 Timothy 6:19, where Paul tells Timothy to tell those who are wealthy in his church, which you could put most Americans in that category, given where we stand in comparison to everybody else in the world. What does he say? He says, basically said, if you want to take hold of that which is really life, then you got to let go. You got to be generous. Now, he wasn't talking about eternal life. That's not what he's talking about. In that scenario, they were already believers. But what he's talking about was the benefits that come along with being generous, with eternal life on the here and the now, the present blessings that we get right now. God has wired us for generosity. And so if you want to find yourselves more content, more satisfied with your resources, then you need to do that. Now, once again, there's a lot of people who would agree with that and say, yes, that's what I want. I want more margin to be able to give and live generously, because I know that's what God has called me to do. But I have debt. But I struggle to put food on the table. So what do I do? And that's where books like the Money Challenge, Marriage Challenge, and then of course Find More Money come into play, where I try to walk individuals through to help them, come alongside of them and encourage them to pursue financial help for the sake of living and giving generously.
We're talking with Art Rainer, author of Find More Money, Increase Your Income to Tackle Debt, Save Wisely, and Live Generously. It's a guide to really one word, increase. Increase so that you can have more to be able to be the generous giver you want to be, more to live the life that God has you and not be a slave to debt. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the principles and techniques to a gig economy, to taking on another opportunity, other ways to make money, and how you can manage what you have and what you need as we return right after this break with Art Rainer. We'll be right back. Shalom, I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nations Ministry. Our ministry is a teaching ministry, and through our television programs, Revealing the Bible and Revealing Prophecy, we share a wealth of information with you. We conduct in-person teachings around the state of Alabama every week. Over the course of the past 12 years, I've compiled an extraordinary library of sermons, teachings, video series, and commentaries that all bring a Jewish believer's perspective to the Bible. As a ministry, it's our desire that these teachings be made available to everyone. That is why we have created the Biblical Truth Library that allows you unlimited access to all of the audio and video teachings for a fraction of the cost. Imagine being able to study alongside a Messianic rabbi at your own pace and learn about prophecy, Islam, Judaism, Jesus' life, the prophetic significance of the Feast of Israel, and so much more for just a small monthly, quarterly, or annual subscription price. In addition, 2 new classes are added to the library every week. These teachings, if purchased individually, would cost over $3,000, but for as little as 50 cents a day, you can have unlimited access to every sermon, every teaching, every course, and learn at your own pace, and your access fee is tax deductible. You can watch on any smartphone, tablet, PC, or smart TV, and can start and pause the teaching at any time and start right back up when you are ready to continue. I want to personally invite you to explore the Biblical Truth Library and gain insights into the Scripture like you have never had before. Simply select the subscription option that's best for you. Visit ignitinganation.com and click on the Biblical Truth Library to start your learning journey with me today. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. We're talking with Art Rainer, author of Find More Money, Increase Your Income to Tackle Debt, Save Wisely, and Live Generously. Art, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Art, there's a strong biblical foundation. You made a statement. There are many scriptures about money. Actually, there's more scriptures about money than there are about prayer. And people need to understand that this was something that God knew that we would be faced with. We would have needs. We would have needs, wants, and desires, and that there was going to be a struggle. And struggle was going to be stewardship, struggle with our abilities, our inflated views of our abilities, our dealing with, we virtually, if you work for somebody, you're in a Old Testament indentured servant model. And nobody wants to look at themselves as an indentured servant. But if you have somebody you report to, you have a master, and they set your pay, and you may think you're worth more than you're getting, and you find yourself dissatisfied. And there's also that little battle that goes on within you. And the model I grew up in was my father worked for the same company for 48 years. Didn't change jobs. When I took my first job and I changed jobs a year and a half later, he sat me down and told me that if I kept this pattern up, no one would ever hire me because I was unstable. And I said, well, in your world, that might look that way. In my world, I'm a skills merchant. I acquired skills here. I now leverage those skills to get a better job here. I will then spend 2 to 3 years of acquiring skills here that I will then package and market and move myself up by becoming greater and more valuable because of the skills in which I've gathered and make that more marketable. But for many who find themselves in a position where they are living paycheck to paycheck and they don't have the ability to advance, your book covers that as kind of a starting point. This is where you are. Let's take a very unbridled view of, okay, this is where you stand. You're living paycheck to paycheck. You pretty much cut out all you can cut out, and that's the existence. Do I have to stay that way?
And the answer is no. And there are many out there that are that fit into that exact description that you just laid out, and they are stressed. They're experiencing many sleepless nights, and they're frustrated. And I just want to encourage those who are listening to this, who are watching this right now, to let you know there is hope. There really is hope out there, and a side gig may be a viable option for you. As we said earlier in the show, 57 million Americans right now have a side gig. They're generating income outside of their day-to-day work, that's what a side gig is, right? You have work outside of your work. Now, we're not talking about another 40-hour job on top of your 40-hour job. There's some myths that are out there about what people think that side gigs are. It's not entirely another job on top of your job. What we're looking at is probably about 10 hours a week. So there is work involved. There is time involved in generating additional income. But we're not talking about another 40 hours. But the average side gig, the average person with a side gig makes about $8,000 per year. And that can go a long way. So we're not talking about being a gazillionaire. We're talking about around $8,000, maybe a little bit more. But that can go a long way. That's enough to max out your Roth IRA if you're struggling to set aside money for retirement. That's a lot of money to put toward debt, knocking out those high interest rate credit cards that are driving you insane. It can help you get rid of that car loan that you wish that you would not have done. You got that 7-year car loan and you're in year 5 and you just want to knock that thing out. $8,000 a year can go a long way toward that. And of course, if you're simply struggling to put food on the table, it can absolutely help with that. Now, also when we talk about side gigs, many people, their mind immediately shifts towards Uber and Lyft and Airbnb. And they're thinking, you know what? Clearly a side gig is not for me because I don't like driving around. I don't like people. So you take those out of the equation. Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, those are not for me. The good news is that there are a number of side gigs out there. And in the book, I introduce the reader to what's called your trifecta. And your trifecta is a place where your passion, your skills, and the opportunity to actually make money all collide together. And I walk the readers through how to discover that trifecta with your passion. I ask questions like, what did you actually like to do as a child? Like, what did you do when you weren't being paid to do anything and you could do whatever you want? What did you do? What did you dream about doing? Even now, what do you like talking about when you're not even prompted to talk about? For me, it's kind of obvious. I like talking about finances. I like helping people with their personal finances. I always warn somebody. They pull me aside and said, hey, I have a question about my finances. I say, look, just so you know, you're going to need to sit down because if you get me started, I'm going to go for a long time. It's because it's my passion. I love talking about it. I love helping people in this area. And then what is your skill set? And I'm not saying what you think that you're good at. What are you actually good at? There is a massive difference between the two. I may think that I am a phenomenal painter, but you know what? Nobody's ever bought my paintings or has asked me to paint a picture for them. That may tell me that I'm actually not a good painter. So what is your skill set? One of the ways to determine that is to figure out, okay, well, what is somebody actually already paying you to do right now? You're receiving a paycheck. Why are you receiving that paycheck? What are you doing for that organization? You have a skill that's worth paying for. Somebody's already paying you for it. Also, when somebody contacts you with a need, what are they asking you to do? Are they asking you to help with some electrical work in the house? Are they asking you, in my case, are they asking you for financial help? People send me text, emails, reach out to me on social media all the time about financial help. What are people actually asking you to do because they see you as valuable in that particular area? And then finally, what is that opportunity that where your passion, your skill set actually come together to where you can make money doing it? If you're not making money doing it, just so you know, it's considered a hobby. It's not a side gig. It's something that's bad to do, but it's definitely not a side gig. If you're not making money doing it, it's a hobby. I have a friend, Kristen, who grew up in Florida. And she grew up going to Disney on a regular basis and just became a Disney aficionado. Knew Disney inside and out. Well, she got to the place where she needed to be able to help her family make some additional income. Mm-hmm. So she started searching out for some different opportunities that fit her passion, which was Disney. Her skill set, she's very, very organized, very relational. And then, of course, the opportunity to make money. And she ran across an organization called Travelmation. And so right now, she's helping individuals, helping families plan vacations to Disney. And she absolutely loves doing it. And it doesn't even feel like a job for her. I was at our gym, and I was running alongside of a gentleman, and I was in the process of writing this book, Find More Money. And I was talking to him about it. And he said, I have a side gig. He goes, the thing is, I love it. He said, I could get a part-time job. I could do that. He said, I've even tried that before. Because the problem with, quote unquote, your traditional part-time jobs, think about getting a part-time job at Target or somewhere like that, is that it feels like work. When I do my side gig, it doesn't feel like work. I'm still making money, but I actually enjoy doing it. It just doesn't even feel like work, so it's not that big of a burden on me. And so that's what I want readers to find. If you're wondering, is there something out there for me? Well, there likely is. And hopefully there's a place where your passion, what you get excited about doing anyway, your skill set, what somebody's already paying you to do, what people think that you're good at, once again, what you think that you're good at, and then, of course, the opportunity to make money all collide together and walk readers through that, and then also provides a number of different opportunities that are out there that you're likely not familiar with at all.
As I'm listening to you talk, and I'm thinking about freelancer.com and Fiverr and some of the places that we go to find get a logo designed or a particular picture or graphic we want done. I also think about if you're doing that as your job, is it a conflict of interest for you to do it personally? As a full-time employee of a company, quote unquote, technically you're a full-time employee of that company, and if you are making the skills available that you're employed to do to somebody else, is that a conflict of interest? I don't know. That just comes to my mind.
That's a great question. Where you think there may be a conflict of interest, and I write about this in the book, that does need to be disclosed to your employer. Often, though, it's not a conflict of interest. In fact, it ends up benefiting the employer. I have a friend, Sam, who did social media at an organization. That was his full-time job. He worked with that organization, managing the social media accounts, doing social media promotions, and he got a side gig literally in another state, managing another organization's social media. Well, here's what ended up happening. It ended up being a significant benefit for his full-time job because the side gig, the outside organization gave him resources to then promote. And so he was able to experiment with what works, what doesn't work. And he ended up learning skills that would then help his current job. So essentially they were helping train him to do his job better and to benefit their other organization, the organization that he worked for. In addition, he was asked to do a website. Now, he had never actually created a website before. He was very technologically savvy. And just so you know, you don't have to be technologically savvy to do side gigs, but in his case, he was. And so he told them, look, I've never created a website before, but I'm happy to give it a go. And so they gave him the resource to do it, and he actually created a really good website. Well, guess what? He took that skill set, brought it back to his organization, his full-time work, and created about 5 different websites for them. So once again, that side gig trained him in an entirely different skill. So one, made him do his skill better, or helped him do his job better. Two, it trained him in an entirely new, different skill that would then benefit the existing organization. And that's what you want to find. You want to find something that actually feeds into your existing work and helps your existing work and doesn't necessarily take away from that. Is that always the case? Is that always possible? No, it's not. But if you can, man, it's a great setup for you. And your employers are more than likely going to be extremely happy that you have those opportunities. Now, when there is a conflict of interest, you're competing for customers, then there certainly can be an issue there. And so that needs to be disclosed to your employer, so that everything's on the up and up.
In the early years of eBay, feeding into the auction marketplace was very lucrative. I sold an entire art collection for much more than the dealer and appraiser offered me per piece. I was able to put it out for bid and get more for it on eBay than I did on trying to sell it to a local collector. Are those still good avenues for people that like to thrift shop and flip items, and is that still a viable marketplace, or has that reached its saturation point?
I don't think it's reached its saturation point. It is viable. The downside is that it's a higher risk way to generate income, right? Because you don't really know what a particular item will bring. In fact, you could end up losing money on that item. So if you're going to go that route, if you're going to go the flipping route, then you really need to be very well versed in whatever you're trying to sell. And those that do it well tend to hone in on a very specific category, whether it's baseball memorabilia, shoes, and they specialize in a very certain specific category, so that they just know what to buy, and what it will likely go to sell on the open market. And so would I recommend that everybody do that? No, not necessarily. Is it viable? Yes, but there is risk, and you just need to know what you're doing before you embark on that particular journey for that side gig.
You know, some of the obvious ones we know that you take a look at the apps on your phone and see who you use to order from, and you'll find DoorDash or Grubhub or one of the other people that are just delivering meals. They're not dealing with people. It's not even transactional. Your doorbell rings, you open the door, they hand you a bag, and they walk away, because everything is done through the app. They're just getting the tip and whatever percentage they get from that. So in speaking about skilled versus non-skilled, there's plenty of non-skilled opportunities out there to do deliveries, to be a dog walker, a house sitter, just so many other opportunities. If you would expand, I have the real estate agent I use lives out of town. She spends a lot of time in town, and so she offers her services as a dog and house sitter so that she can be in town. So it's more convenient for her, cuts her commute, and she gets paid. And so she's the lowest price person that I know that does it. But she benefits so much greatly because she cuts out 2 hours a day of commute, the gas expense, plus she gets paid, and she stays in nice homes and takes care of dogs, and she likes them. So that works out well for her. So there are plenty of opportunities, but it goes back to motivation, ambition, and excuse me, the Exodus generation model of I'd rather curse the darkness than light a candle. And there's a lot of people who are stuck in that place where they're dissatisfied with their financial situation, but they are actually, they will shoot down every idea. And then I have seen the problem, and the problem is not the market. The problem is not my cash flow. The problem is me.
Yeah, you do. If you're going to generate more income, taking side gigs that are outside of your day-to-day work, it's going to take work, and you're going to have to take that step. Complaining doesn't do anything for you. Complaining doesn't reduce your interest rate on your credit card and help pay that nasty thing off. Complaining doesn't reduce the term on your car loan. Complaining really doesn't do anything for you. So you have to take that step. You have to get aggressive in this area. And I think that it's important to note that we're not talking about taking a side gig for 10 years. Now, it could be the case. But usually when we talk about taking a side gig, we're talking about a very specified amount of time that helps you attain a very certain goal. And when I walk you through that and find more money, so that you can live more generously, pay off debt, set aside money for retirement. And so you're not taking this with a mindset, well, I'm going to have to do this for the rest of my life. Could that be the case for some? Maybe. But for most, you're looking at 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years doing a side gig to accomplish a very specific goal that you've set out to reach.
Well, it takes discipline. No matter how you do this, it takes discipline. I've always worked on a budget, and I've trained my daughter to work on a budget. And so you know what you have coming in, you know what you have going out, and you budget. You take advantage of every opportunity you can to do budget billing for your utilities, so it's the same amount every month. There's things you can do that are simple and easy to manage your money, and then how to go past what your current employment situation is to find more money. You could, I guess, go to everyone's home and look under their couch seats and collect change, and that becomes your side gig, but I won't let you in my house.
No, that's going to be a very awkward side gig.
Very awkward. But this book contains incredible advice as to, one, clearly assessing where you are, how you got there, and what you want to do about it. And if you're motivated to do something about it, then this is the book for you. It's called Find More Money, Increase Your Income to Tackle Debt, Save Wisely, and Live Generously by Art Rainer. If you go to ignitingnation.com, click on today's broadcast schedule. You're going to see Art's name. Click on it. You can come to a screen that says, like the interview, get the book. Click on it, that link, and it'll take you right to the page to buy the book. Art Rainer, thank you for the sound wisdom and the clarity which you bring into offering people an opportunity to expand past the limitations that may be somewhat self-imposed or may be circumstantial, and that they actually do have a choice to do something about it, and they're not as confined as they think they are. So thank you for shedding light into a not often talked about subject.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about it.
Great. God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.